India mishandled the relationship. I mean, we assumed that they were pro-Pakistan and didn't deal with them as practical possibilities for engagement. But I think what we saw happen in the last 9 years under Mr. Modi is really the transformation of the relationship with UAE. Because, almost for 30 years, no Indian Prime Minister had gone to UAE.
So, in this week's Rajamandala, you've looked at Pakistan's economic crisis, which has been ongoing. There's been, I think, for months now, we've been hearing of the IMF deal, the bailout, which is finally seems to be happening. But you've looked at it a little more interestingly that there are reports of the UAE also offering to invest in Pakistan in a sort of more interesting way, not a straight, just handing over cash kind of arrangement. How do you see this from, say, from an Islamabad Rawalpindi perspective? The kinds of money flowing in traditionally it's been for security reasons or IMF bailouts for the US. How is this going to be if the UAE kind of package works out? What is in it for Pakistan and how is it qualitatively or different from, say, an IMF bailout on the other hand?
No, all Pakistan's friends told them, that is Saudi Arabia, UAE, and China, look, you got to get the basics sorted out with the IMF. Because what Pakistan was doing was last 3-4 years, I mean, not really, wanting to avoid IMF discipline, say, okay, give me $2 billion, let me put it in the bank, then pay off some other loan, then take another $2 billion from somebody. So I think it was just going around asking for money to keep its economy afloat. I mean, just to avoid a default, that it was just borrowing, repaying, borrowing, repaying. What the Saudis and what the UAE seems to have told them at this point, look, instead of going around constantly asking for money, why don't you open up your economy, sort out the basics with the IMF? And if you're willing to privatize, we can come and invest in a big way. That is, instead of asking for money as loans or otherwise, take investment that can modernize your economy, that can create jobs, that can create exports. So that is the theory. I mean, that you need invest, like we do much. We tell the Sri Lanka the same thing, that look, it's not enough just to get loans and bad projects, but you open up your economy, get investments, and that will boost your economy so that over a longer term, you can deal with the structural crisis. So this way, the UAE seems to have stepped in and said, look, we are willing to help you, provided you do these things. So there seems to be this negotiation, one on the investments, on privatization, on a CEPA, or the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So that's what is being tried out. But there will be opposition. For example, Pakistani Business Association has opposed in the past an FTA with China and saying that, look, if you bring in UAE, then Pakistan's industry will be wiped out. So those are natural domestic politics that is there. So I think the challenge now is for the Pakistan army to decide. So it's really a call now with Islamabad, not with Islamabad, but with Rawalpindi, where the army is headquartered. Because the civilian politicians know that implementing the IMF program will have huge costs politically. Raising oil prices, raising taxes. I mean, you really have to squeeze, like all that we did. We had to do this in the 90s, early 90s. But Pakistan, until now, they didn't have to do this painful thing. So the civilians have been resistant. But I think the army chief is saying, look, we are now, there is a crunch time has come. In the old days, you could use your geopolitical value to get support from the big guys. But today, that's not going to happen. So therefore, we need to do actually reform. And if the army chief is the one who does it, then the interim government, something that's likely to come before the elections, once the elections are announced, so the technocratic team, they would do the implementation. So the politician can at least keep some distance from it. Yeah. But then the ball will be in General Asim Munir's house. But I think he knows that there's not much room to play. So I presume he seems to be far more committed to reform at this stage because the choices are limited. And I think here, you might remember a few months ago, General Bajwa was being criticized, what he had said earlier when he was in office, saying, look, I don't have the oil to run the tanks, we're really broke. Even the army is broke. Yeah. So I think they're at a real crunch. And my sense is the pressure is mounting on Asim Munir to do something. So that's where we are. And historically, the civilians mismanaged the economy. The army once in a while bought technocrats, or they went to the geopolitical allies and say, guys, we need some money. But now I think all of them are telling them, you got to reform and you got to bear some pain. But if you do that, there'll be support from. And I think here in this case, the UAE will be quite an interesting case.
Just to follow up, in the article you mentioned, everyone should read it. It's on the IndianExpress.com, and there should be a link wherever you're watching this video, the description. Um, in the article you mentioned, you call back to when Imran Khan, when there was a lot of back channeling and General Bajwa, the ceasefire was re-implemented, and then there was some trade. I think it was wheat and sugar. There were two or three items which Pakistan needed, India had, and then there was a sort of political backlash to that kind of, and that was, of course, there was an India angle to it, but Imran Khan still sort of looms large, at least for now, over Pakistan's politics as well. Does the army right now, does General Munir have the kind of, does he have the political capital, or to put it another way, to push a reform like this through, if it's needed, or some basic reforms which require a little bit of pain?
Yeah, I mean, I think the what happened in 2021 was really it's interesting looking back, because you remember 2019 February we had the Pulwama march, we had the Balakot. Things were really bad between India and Pakistan, and then you have the India's constitutional amendments on Article 370. So really, you saw things collapse so quickly between India and Pakistan. And Pakistan took a really hard line. We can't engage India. We can't talk to India unless it reverses its positions on Kashmir. But yet, within less than 2 years, you had the ceasefire announcement. And there was clearly a back channel. At that time, media reports said Mr. National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval from our side, and the army chief were directly in contact, and they produced this agreement while it was formally announced by the DGMOs of the two armies. So it's interesting that in spite of the Pakistani anger at what happened in August 2019, which is exactly 4 years ago, they come around to negotiating a ceasefire. And it's interesting that the ceasefire has actually held so far. So at that time when the ceasefire was announced, it was said, look, more steps will follow. Pakistan will agree to a liberalized trade. There were, at the time, if I recall rightly, there were two items, sugar and cement. Both were in short supply in Pakistan. India had, good position to supply it. But Imran Khan, who accepted it as the commerce minister, overruled it as the prime minister. Clearly, the last person to speak to him said, look, you can't, compromise on the Kashmir question, so therefore don't do it. So it's interesting that the civilians were the ones who overruled it at that time, while the army was actually saying, we need a change. You remember Bajwa was talking about geoeconomics, and time has come for Pakistan to have good neighborly relations. Now, does this thesis survive him? Does General Munir, can he go in this direction? We don't know. I mean, the logic of the reforms suggests they need to open up. They need to engage their neighbors differently. They need to trade. Now, probably India would be the last one to do in a way that, they would start something with the Gulf. But my sense is that if Bajwa could do it, he had the clout to do it. If the Munir says, look, he has problems on Afghanistan, let's stabilize the India relationship, keep things under calm. So therefore, I think there is room for negotiation. I mean, that's all I'm saying, that if 2019, in the heat of the Kashmir moment, there was actually a negotiation that happened. Today, I think the reality is Pakistan has become weaker, that its situation is bad, but the domestic policy of changing anything on India is always hard. But I think if anybody can pull it off, it's only the army can pull it off, because the civilians won't want to own it at this point of time.
The other interesting is just to focus on the UAE for a second, I mean, on the Gulf as a whole. India's relationship, as you point out in the article, has improved leaps and bounds, particularly under Prime Minister Modi. And they have been traditional partners, and although there has been some ups and downs in the relationship with Pakistan. How does this entire circle now, there would be a time where we would have seen it as a zero-sum game. Oh, if you're helping out Pakistan, and that thinking has clearly changed. How can an investment with someone, we also buy someone, we also, right now China has probably the biggest leverage in Pakistan, economically as a single actor. What does it mean for India if you have, say, multiple players coming in now, with whom we have certainly good relationships, if not very close relationships?
Look, I think India would certainly prefer UAE than China.
Yeah.
That UAE playing a larger role in Pakistan economy is better than having China gain even bigger control over Pakistan. I think on that there are no two views. What has changed? I mean, it was not just a zero-sum game in the past. The triangular relationship between India, Pakistan, and UAE or Gulf as a whole, that it was really tilted in favor of Pakistan until a decade ago. At least I think part of the problem was India mishandled the relationship. I mean, we assumed that they were pro-Pakistan and didn't deal with them as practical possibilities for engagement. So in a way, by default, because of our own neuralgia about Pakistan, about what was happening, we tended to mishandle them, I think. That's my personal view. But I think what we saw happen in the last 9 years under Mr. Modi is really the transformation of the relationship with UAE. Because, almost for 30 years, no Indian Prime Minister had gone to UAE. Mr. Modi has gone there 5 times. So in some ways, the UAE has become a very interesting preferred partner. And then, as I mentioned in the article, I mean, UAE reportedly at the time, there were a lot of media reports. If you remember 2021, actually UAE was helping facilitate the dialogue between India and Pakistan. And then after 2019, in fact, let's start in 2019. At the beginning of 2019, I mean, this was just around the time of Pulwama and Balakot. I mean, that actually the OIC meeting in UAE, Sushma Swaraj was invited to speak.
Yeah.
This is the first time after the disaster of 1960s that India was invited. And Pakistan objected to it vigorously, but it didn't. Second, I think they, as I said, look, they seem to have played a role in producing some kind of not mediation is the wrong word, a facilitation of getting the two sides together. And then if you see on the Kashmir question, I mean, in fact, both UAE and Saudis didn't back Pakistan demanding India should be criticized for what happened in constitutional change. And on top of it, you had actually UAE putting money into Kashmir. For the first time, they're talking about investments in Kashmir. So in a way, they have today a growing relationship with India. And the relationship with India is much, much bigger than what they have with Pakistan. But at the same time, they have a significant leverages in Pakistan, because all said and done, China is great for Pakistan. But look, there is no comfort level. I mean, if you see Dubai is like, for Pakistan is one hop from Karachi to Dubai is like a next stop. Everyone is there all the time. The elite lives off there. The politicians have meetings there. So it's really a hub for Pakistan. And the UAE, as it done for a lot of countries, for example, in the Middle East, is doing something similar to Egypt, which is again a military regime, while UAE investments are playing a big role. So I think the UAE now has enough experience of building infrastructure. So in a way that they can contribute to Pakistan's transformation. If they have a good relationship with India, they might have even a deeper economic relationship with Pakistan. And we have a free trade agreement with them. They're trying to negotiate a free trade agreement with Pakistan. So I think there are possibilities here. I mean, I think we shouldn't jump too far ahead of the story, but I think there are interesting possibilities, which India's changed relationship with UAE and Pakistan's traditional dependence on the Gulf. And I think what has changed is Pakistan's relationship with UAE has changed fundamentally. There was a time when Pakistan was seen as a big country, very influential in the world. And today it is the weaker party. While the Gulf is rich, Pakistan is poor. And I think that equation too has changed. So my sense is there is an interesting moment here. As we said, do the roads to Pakistan go through Gulf?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Everyone, read the piece. It's on the IndianExpress.com.